Good. Okay.
Welcome, welcome, everybody. So excited to have you here today. We are gathering for the M-PAI company information session. And as a reminder, this session is intended for technologists and companies who are applying to be part of the challenge, not for judges. So just want to make sure everyone knows why we are here today so that you are not wasting your time. We're going to give folks a couple more minutes to join and then we'll jump right into it. Again, this session is for technology companies. If you are joining the M-PAI Challenge as a judge, we will be having an orientation on Thursday. So you will have a chance to see our faces again. Keisha, do you want to get started at 5 after or jump right into
I
it?
think we've got good critical mass, so why don't you go ahead and kick us off, Alma?
All right. Morning, everybody. Hope you're having a good week so far. My name is Alma Akoto. I use she, her pronouns. I am the project coordinator here at Prime Health, and I will be introducing you to our session today. First thing to know is that during our time together, after I finish my little spiel, you're going to have a chance to meet some of the folks from our team. We're going to talk a little bit about who Prime Health is and the kind of work that we do. Keisha is going to give us an overview of the M-PAI project, which you've heard about ad nauseum over the past couple of months, I'm sure. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the problem that we are all here today to help solve. And then Felicity, who is our program manager, will talk a little bit about the challenge process, the timeline, and what you can expect over the next couple of months. And then at the end of the session, we'll have time to go over some FAQs and then a Q&A at the end. When we get to our Q&A, you'll be able to drop your questions in the chat and then we will read those out. If you have questions before then, also feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll try to get to them as soon as possible. All right, so meet the team. We have critical mass here as well. Most of us are on the call here today. Our president and CEO, Sarah, could not be here today, but she sends her hellos. We have Felicity, who is our program manager, who I mentioned is going to talk a little bit about the challenge process and the timeline and what to expect. Keisha is our partnerships management manager, who spearheaded a lot of this M-PAI project, and she will talk to you all about the project itself, and again, an analysis of the problem we're here today to solve. Darby is our resident tech genius and will help with any technical issues that you may have. And again, my name is Ama, also here to play backup on tech support, and I might have a couple of jokes to share with you throughout our time today. Next slide, please. All right, so some general housekeeping rules. We ask that to minimize interruptions, you all keep yourself muted. Thank you so much for everyone who has done that already. We encourage you to make use of the chat. If you have questions, comments, concerns, feel free to drop those in there and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you're comfortable, feel free to change your name on here to include your organization and your pronouns. And then lastly, again, Darby will be the one to help you out with any tech issues. All right, so here comes the end of my spiel. Talk a little bit about who Prime Health is and what we do. We are a Colorado-based organization, and a lot of our work centers around bringing together diverse stakeholders from various industries, organizations, backgrounds, and perspectives. And overall, our goal is to build a community of people and to also increase our collective capacity to solve healthcare problems. That comes into play. Via a lot of buzzwords, as I like to call them, but catalyzing innovation, implementing pilot programs, and accelerating sustainable healthcare reform. All of that work kind of coalesces into what you see here in this yellow circle, which are these three major buckets of work. We have the challenge, which is being implemented here for the M-PAI project. We also have the Colorado Health Innovation Community, otherwise known as CHIC. And then we also have our annual Innovation Summit. This year's summit, which again, I'm sure you've heard us talk about, takes place on October 21st. And the theme this year is From Disruption to Discovery. That is where we will also be announcing the finalists of our M-PAI Challenge. So you will again hear more information about the Innovation Summit. And we definitely encourage you all to attend if you can. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Keisha, who's going to talk to you about the M-PAI project.
Thanks so much, Alma. So the Medicaid, you can see how hard it is to say, which is why we call it M-PAI for the start. The Medicaid Participatory Action Incubator is the project that we have been working on since the beginning of the year. And I will come back and answer that question, Terry, in a moment. So we have been doing this work, designing this work since January, with a specific theory of change in mind, which I'll talk about. Darby, if you go to the next slide. The reason we have set out to do this work is because we know that the federal government has come down and mandated specific work requirements, community engagement requirements for Medicaid members across the country. And we felt like in order to make a system that works for all, we need to have those who are the most impacted by the system meaningfully engage in a co-design process. And then we can ideally create a system that not only works for all, puts equity at the forefront, but most importantly, mitigates that unnecessary coverage loss. Obviously, it's going to do a bunch of other things, but that North Star goal here of what we're trying to accomplish is not having people lose their coverage unnecessarily. So on this next slide, you can see the phases that we're in. This is the kickoff of the challenge phase, which is a flagship kind of event that Prime Health has done over the years. This is a specific challenge for this Medicaid problem that we are trying to solve. And it is coming after we have spent the first half of the year talking to folks who are going to be directly impacted by this type of mandated reporting for people's community engagement hours. So we ran a discovery process from February to May. We now have all of the reports out from all of the different user groups that we met with, which includes not only Medicaid members, but also providers, nonprofit organizations, job training organizations, higher ed institutions. And we heard from all of these folks about the type of things that they are looking for in a solution for tracking and verifying hours worked. Or volunteered or in education for these Medicaid members. So this is the kickoff of this challenge phase, which will run through into the piloting stage. At this point, we will be collecting applications from companies who want to have a hand in solving this problem, which is who all of you represent. Then we will be evaluating these companies not only based on the community recommendations that came out of the discovery phase, but then we'll also in the second round, and Felicity will talk about this later, we'll be evaluating companies based on how well their solutions fit into the technology requirements, the accessibility requirements of the federal government and the state of Colorado to make sure that the companies that do come through to the final round could potentially be implemented by the state if they were so chosen. And then our last phase of this, we'll have those finalists. We will coordinate matchmaking with host organizations. So those may be higher ed institutions, they may be public health organizations, counties, community-based organizations that take a lot of volunteers. Those are the types of organizations that will host some of these solutions, depending on what the solution looks like. And they'll have the pilot phase to test out what that looks like for the actual solution and these actual companies for several months. If you go to the next slide, you can see again, the purpose of this is to really put the folks who are experiencing the problem, experiencing a disparity, and needing to meet these requirements at the center of the solution. So we've heard a lot about what people at the center feel like they need in a solution. We've heard about people who are going to deal with the reporting and what they need. And we are aligning with HCPUF's North Star, which is the mitigation of unnecessary coverage loss, which does go back to Terry's question here, which is around how Prime Health is funded. Prime Health has numerous different streams of funding, but for this project, for the discovery process, HCPUF did supply a small amount of funding for specifically the discovery process around the volunteer organization. So that was one of our user groups. They supported what that workshop looked like. And then the larger amount of the discovery process and much of this challenge process has been funded by the Colorado Health Foundation, and we are continually fundraising and bringing in different sources of funds to support each phase of this challenge going through. The outcomes that we've got outlined for each phase, I mentioned this final report, which is a key part of how all of your solutions would be judged. This has the community recommendations. These are uploaded on our website. We've shared materials around these and will continue to do so. But if you've been in the application already, you will see links to the rubric, the application, the reports, the final recommendations, which is just a piece of the report cut out so you can read like the most abbreviated version of what people had said in this discovery process. And this phase for the challenge and vetting, the outcome or the output will be a list of vetted companies that have solutions that incorporate these community recommendations and are also in compliance that they would need for implementation at a state level. And then our final phase of piloting will be we will have companies that will have not only been vetted and through this process and aligned with the community recommendations, but they will also have been tested now at a specific organization and had a chance to adjust and course correct for how their solution has moved and supported an actual organization. So with that, I'm going to transition and hand it over to my colleague and friend Felicity here to walk us through like a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of the actual challenge phase, specifically for the companies that are here and companies that will be joining us.
Thanks, Keisha. Hi, everyone. I'm Felicity Hughes. I'm going to stay off camera for today. I'm having some connectivity issues, so I'm hoping that if I am off camera, you'll still be able to hear me. So we'll go ahead and get started with the challenge overview. Some of you may be familiar with Prime Health's Innovation Challenge that we've run annually for, I think, 14 years now. And this challenge is modeled similarly to our innovation challenge. So there will be 2 rounds of application for companies. Our initial round application is available now and consists of 30 questions. Those are broken into 16 questions focused on team and demographics. That will include things like company summary and who comprises your team. 11 questions on the solution and user alignment, such as a description of your solution and how it works. And then 3 administrative questions like a bibliography and a place for you to upload extra files like that. Within judging, all 30 of those questions are broken into these categories. Company will be weighted 8%. Your solution is 17%. Equity and human-centered design, 25%. Data privacy, 8%. User support and implementation, 25%. And goal alignment, 17%. And both the rubric and the application were developed based on the recommendations that we got from that discovery phase that Keisha was describing. And were really thoughtfully considered into how we wanted to weight things. Equity and human-centered design, as well as user support and implementation, are very important, and that came up multiple times throughout our discovery phase process. And then the application materials that will be available, you'll have your company application, company rubric, and then the user recommendations that are compiled from that final report. And those are all available in the application. You can get PDFs of all of those, and also you can find the user recommendations on our website. We'll go to the next slide. Yeah. So here is a timeline. The challenge phase is from July 1st to August 12th. From our company applications are currently open and they will remain open until July 20th. Today we're having our info session. Thank you all for being here. And then from July 21st to August 10th, we will have our first judging period. And so that will consist of judges evaluating the applications based on the rubric that we just discussed and providing scores and comments. Every company that participates in the challenge will receive their scores and comments. They will be anonymous, but those will be available, and we hope that those are useful feedback to you no matter what the outcome of the challenge is for you. And then on August 12th, we will have our judging consensus meeting. And what will happen there is we'll have all of our judges come together and they will discuss the companies that have applied. There aren't any judges that will review every application. So we'll provide scores and comments so that people can get kind of an overview of every application, and we'll decide which companies are moving on to our semifinal round. August 13th to October 13th is our vet and validate phase, and that is with our semifinalists. So from August 13th to September 21st, the semifinal company application will be opened. Well, the first application is focused on how your solution meets the user requirements that we compiled from our discovery phase. The second round application will be more focused on meeting the federal and state requirements for the system that CMS puts out and that the state puts out. So that's what that second round application will be focused on. In August and September, we'll also hold speed networking sessions for our companies and our judges. And our plan is to have a different day for different user types. We have a good variety of judges. Some are technologists, some are providers, some are Medicaid members themselves. Some will be working with this system because they work for a nonprofit or and need to validate hours that way, or a job training organization. And so we want to have different days focused on those different user groups for companies to speed network with them. From September 22nd to October 9th, we'll have our second judging period. And then on October 13th, we'll have a second consensus meeting where we'll decide which companies are our finalists. On October 21st at our Prime Health Summit, we will be announcing those finalists, and then moving into the final round where we will match you with pilots, as Keisha described earlier. So that was a pretty quick overview. Keisha or Amma or Darby, do you feel like I missed anything that I could have hit on before we open it up for questions? Just want to make sure.
One thing I might suggest is actually going to the next slide to overview the frequently asked questions before we open it up, since we know what's frequently asked.
Yeah, I'm happy to go over those. Thank you, Darby. So these are some frequently asked questions. When do applications close? We are closing applications on July 20th. That'll be at the end of the day. You can apply using this QR code, or the link to the application is also available on our website. We are also often asked how many judges will be evaluating my application. Each company will be evaluated by at least 6 judges, and your application will be evaluated based on the challenge rubric, focused on how well solutions align with the community recommendations from the discovery phase, like we talked about before. And the second round will focus on alignment with technical state and federal compliance. So those are our frequently asked questions that we wanted to just make sure we shared with you all. What other questions do you have for us today?
I know Amma mentioned before that folks can drop their questions in the chat, but I would also invite folks to come off mute if they have questions and would like to ask them out loud as well.
Yeah, this is Mike Brewer with All Your Data. Kind of curious if partial solutions would be considered, if you bring a data integration engine, but it's not the front end, et cetera. Will partial solutions be judged and considered, or has it got to be a complete end-to-end solution?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we are open to solutions that are still in development.
But is the development of that system still end-to-end, user portal, back end, et cetera? Or could a company come in and say, okay, we're going to provide the live data bridge, the ability to connect all of the different data elements, et cetera, from the different systems. But we're not going to replace a patient portal or Peak or anything like that. Just basically using our engine and rules engine to manipulate the data.
Yeah, I can take that, Felicity. So,
Okay.
what needs to be ready is you need to have a piece of a product that is market ready. Does it need to be like an entire enterprise system that covers like the volunteer, let's say hours verification and feeding it up to an agency? No, it can do a portion of that process, but it needs to be a complete in whatever process it handles.
Got it. Thank you.
Of course. Um, Felicity, are there dollars associated with the program? What other support might be offered during the program? I'm happy for you to take this, or I'm happy to take it.
Sure. Why don't I start and then you can kind of fill in any information that you think I miss. In terms of other support that may be offered, I saw that's coming from you, Kwame. And if you've participated in our innovation challenge, as I know you have, we do provide a lot of like the support to make sure that you get a pilot if you are chosen for that and to build relationships. And that will still be something that Prime Health offers, along with like the speed networking. And we are also going to be doing our best to provide opportunities for judges to be using and validating your product as well to like really vet it. And we're not 100% sure what that will look like yet, but that will be provided. In terms of dollars, we are in the process of trying to get sponsorship for our pilots, but we don't know 100% what that will look like yet. Is that correct, Keisha?
Yeah, like we're currently fundraising for the amounts that will look like in regards to how much we'll be giving to the companies as well as the hosts and where that flexes and where it doesn't. I would also add that the setup for pilots, like the matchmaking, will be a little bit different in that hosts will be recruited before the finalists are announced, and they will be like primed with what the company's solutions are and what they're doing. And so they will have the opportunity to select folks who they are interested in talking to a little bit further. And so, unlike the past challenge where it kind of concludes with a pitch event, this challenge will not end that way. It'll end with the semifinalists and then more private matchmaking with hosts, kind of speed dating with hosts to then find pairs that then want to go into the pilot stage together. And then we'll come in with the funding to support what that looks like. I think that kind of got to Shiana's question in terms of estimates of funding resources. I think right now we're fundraising for between 10 to 75,000 per pilot, and that would be split between the organization and host. Felicity, do you want to answer Jonathan's question? I don't have this experience of two companies kind of applying together for a solution.
Sorry, was having a hard time coming off mute. Um, two companies applying together. I think that is possible, but we have not really had that experience in the innovation challenge either. So we may need to like discuss that further. Maybe Darby actually has some insight to that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it hasn't come up before as companies applying together in our uh, sort of legacy innovation challenge, though there have been companies that post challenge have partnered up to do a pilot or to work together outside of that. So I would definitely encourage that. I think in this context, it makes more sense. If there's two companies that have complementary solutions, since we are defining, like we are working towards a very defined problem rather than just kind of like anything hosts want to work on that year. This is much more targeted and specific. And, as we kind of discussed earlier, it is a large problem with a large solution needed. And there may be companies that have one component or another. I think if you know that you go together and it's an integrated approach, that makes sense to me. I think if you are wanting to do that and that's your plan, it might be worth just reaching out to Felicity and Keisha and just kind of like touching base on that real quick as you're putting your application in. But I don't see any concerns with that, subject to being overruled by someone else within Prime
Yeah,
Health.
I think that makes sense. Thank you, Darby.
Okay, our next question here from Jennifer. Where is Deloitte in this decision making? Any solution that will make it easier, like CMS requires access to Colorado Peak and CBMS? Um, so what I will say for those folks who are maybe a little bit less read in on this is that right now, Deloitte has a ongoing contract with the State Department for their Medicaid distribution and benefits management, and that goes until 2028. And so Deloitte is on its own track of what they would like to do with the state, and then the state is on their own independent track of what they would like to decide to be the solution for this. As some of you may or may not know, with the Medicaid community engagement requirements, the states are required to have a minimum viable product in place by January 1st, 2027. This challenge is not for developing the minimum viable product. It will be for whatever iteration comes next because we know we're going to need something further along that solves for the issues that you're going to see in this final report that community folks have uplifted. And to my knowledge, Deloitte is not going through the community engagement process that we have just necessarily underwent. Um, the other thing I would say is that the minimum viable product of HCPF, the Healthcare Policy and Finance Department for the state, has already been developed and is posted online. So people can see what that looks like. And it's currently a form that needs to be verified by the user groups because folks know that they can't do self-attestation. So Deloitte is not going to be responsible for the decision making in this challenge in terms of the role that they will play. Deloitte has its own freedom to propose a solution at the end of this for what they think should come after the MVP. And what Prime Health will do is uplift the companies that come out of this challenge and say, here's who we vetted, here's who we vetted as a company. Here's who has been testing themselves in the community with an organization, host partner for the last several months. And here's like who we would recommend. Will we have decision-making power over what gets implemented with the state? No. But we will have done this process to be able to recommend companies for the state to use or for other states, even beyond Colorado, because we know that every state is going to need to be in compliance with this in some way or another.
And I would add that this, excellent answer. And I would add that the state, Colorado has asked us to do this. So this is something that they want us to do and they want to see what these solutions are outside of what Deloitte is.
Yeah, I would specify Colorado, the state of Colorado has not asked us to specifically run a challenge. They have asked us to do the community engagement
Right,
piece and go out and get those results. And then this is our take on how we kind of finish out that cycle.
right.
Um, and I'm happy to answer like a little bit more technical questions too, Jennifer. If you want to privately message me, I'm happy to give you my email if you don't have it already to answer those questions. Kwame, I see your hand is raised. Kwame, did you have a question or maybe was that an accident?
I'm sorry, I'm speaking. I was on mute. I'm sorry. Um, as we were thinking through it, there are a lot of layers to this work, as you all can imagine. And I know when you said that question, especially thinking about Deloitte, so you have the state system, that's one thing. Then you have systems that connect to the actual providers. Then you have where support for the counties. In some cases it can be one thing, and others that's actually three different products that might need to exist. Can you talk a little bit about like is there a priority? I know since you're having community engagement conversation, actually like the state system might not actually be the answer to that problem in that case. So can you talk a little bit about kind of how you prioritize or think about it, or are all of the above important?
Yeah, I think this goes back to Mike Brewer's question around like, does it have to be end to end? And I think the short answer to that is no. And you're exactly right in that there's a lot of different layers of this, and we want to see solutions for all layers and be able to support companies at all different levels of scale in terms of what piece of this puzzle they help fix. One of the things we heard quite often in the user groups was people were like, I want a comprehensive place that I can go. Um, and we also heard that presents a real big security risk, and people are really concerned about data breaches and privacy. And so there are recommendations that you will read in the report that are direct contradictions of one another, even within the same user groups. And so we're asking folks to keep those in mind and keep that end goal North Star in mind about coverage loss as what leads you. But I don't think that there are um, specific pieces that we are prioritizing to say, like, we believe this piece is more important. Like, it will not be, I would not be surprised to see in our finalist stage to have a solution that specifically addresses the volunteer-based organizations and the Medicaid members. Or it specifically addresses how higher ed is going to filter up their information and maintain privacy without being in any kind of violation of the types of regulation that higher ed institutions need to be in compliance with versus job training organizations, for example. And it may be that someone has an enterprise system that they do feel covers end to end, but it actually misses quite a bit of the community requirements that we are looking to align with. And so they don't actually make it to the finalists. So I hope that helps. And I think if you've gotten a chance to take a look at the rubric in the application, you'll see where our priorities lie are across the alignments with what folks have told us so far, rather than one system over another.
That's really interesting. Look, now I'm interested just to see the outcomes. Really interesting. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Sarah Lampe here. I wanted to add to what Keisha was saying there, and that there are, as you read through and review some of what we have found in the reports that we've created, there are spaces and places where innovation and solutions at the source of the user needs are going to need to happen, and innovation at the source of what the state is able to do are going to need to happen. And I think we're going to have a patchworking of how that's going to look, how that's going to work, who's going to pay for that, and how we really want to think about that as we move forward in this challenge is to think fully at the beauty of a patchwork of what a quilt can look like if we actually patch it together successfully and stitch it in a way that makes it come together. Boy, am I really running with this analogy, but you get what I mean. And I think that's what we're trying to look at is how are we stitching this together successfully without necessarily assuming that that patchwork is going to happen at a state level or even a local county level. And so you're right. Like, I think it'll be really interesting to see what our outcomes are here because it's going to be a patchwork of different things coming together.
Any other questions we can answer for folks, whether they're in the chat, things you wish we would have said, things that feel a little outstanding? It's obviously a big layered onion of a project that we've got in front of us. We're excited to get to check out your applications.
Probably just one thing about hosts. If we have hosts that are interested, if there's some work in progress and things like that, my guess would be you guys wouldn't mind, but I figure I'd ask instead of assume.
Yeah, I would say if you have a host in mind that is like based in Colorado, I would say to introduce them to me via email or however you'd like to connect us so we can make sure that they get the same kind of training and instruction around expectations that we're going to give to everyone. So they've got that base level shared understanding. But I think that's perfectly fine if you've got organizations that you want to bring in who you think makes a logical host for you.
Thanks.
All right, I think if we have quenched the curiosity, then Felicity, I'm going to pass it back to you to close us out.
Awesome. Thank you, Keisha. Okay, yeah. Our next steps, before you go, we would really appreciate it if you would fill out this feedback form. You can use this QR code, or I think there is a link being dropped in the chat as well. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email me. My email is felicity@primehealthco.com. And we will get back to you as soon as we can. Again, applications close on Monday, July 20th. And if you have any questions about the application itself, also please feel free to reach out. And I think that's everything.
With a couple of prime, or maybe I don't know who to. I have a question about just that host and just more questions about that. Would y'all be able to
Yeah,
say I have a really specific thing? My apologies.
Sure.
sure. Yeah. And there will be a recording of this available as well that we'll post on our website. So if you want to go back and review the slides or review any of the answers we gave to any questions you have, that will be available for you all. And as long as there aren't any other questions, I think that's it for today. Thank you all for coming. We really look forward to reviewing your applications.
Thanks, folks. Kwame, give us just a minute to stop recording, and then happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.